What if the battle over Roloff Farms just escalated, from emotional to legal? For years, fans of Little People, Big World have watched tensions simmer between Amy Roloff and Matt Roloff. We've seen disagreements over property. We've seen emotional fallout after their divorce. And we've seen Caryn Chandler step into a larger role behind the scenes. But now, rumors are swirling that Amy may have taken things to court over something deeply personal. Not land, not money, but recipes. Yes, the very farm recipes that helped build the Roloff brand. And if the reports circulating among fans are even partially true, this could become one of the most unexpected and emotional disputes in the show's history. Now, before we go any further, let's be clear. There has been no official confirmation of a lawsuit. No verified court filings made public. No formal statements from Amy, Matt, or Caryn confirming legal action. But the speculation, it's growing. Because longtime viewers remember something important. The recipes, the pumpkin bread, the family desserts, the comfort food dishes shared during pumpkin season at the farm weren't just background details. They became part of the identity of Roloff Farms. They appeared in cookbooks. They were shared in interviews. They became part of Amy's personal brand long after the divorce. And that's where questions begin. Who owns family recipes created during a marriage? Who controls branding tied to a shared business after a divorce? And if one party continues using or marketing something deeply associated with the other, could that create legal tension? Again, we are talking about possibilities, not confirmed accusations. But fans started connecting dots when subtle online changes were noticed. Mentions shifted, branding language evolved, and certain promotional materials appeared different than before. Some viewers believe this could simply be routine business restructuring. Others think it may reflect something more complicated behind the scenes. Because here's the truth. When a marriage ends but a brand continues, the lines can blur. And when emotions are already layered with years of history, divorce, property disputes, farm sales, shifting family roles, even something as seemingly simple as a recipe can carry deep meaning. Is this about intellectual property? Is this about legacy? Is this about control over how the Roloff name is represented? Right now, we don't have confirmed answers. But what we do know is this: the story of Roloff Farms has never just been about land. It's been about identity, about contribution, about who built what and who continues to benefit from it. And if legal conversations are happening privately, even if they never become public, it signals something important. That the emotional chapters between Amy and Matt may not be fully closed. That business and personal history are still intertwined. And that for fans of Little People, Big World, the next development, whether confirmed or clarified, could reshape how we understand the legacy of the farm. Because sometimes, for longtime viewers of Little People, Big World, the farm has always meant more than acres of land and seasonal attractions. Roloff Farms became the emotional heart of the series, a place filled with pumpkin seasons, school events, family milestones, and the warmth of homemade traditions that made fans feel like they were part of something special. And at the center of many of those traditions was Amy Roloff. Her recipes, from baked goods to seasonal favorites, weren't just food. They became part of the farm's identity. Visitors often associated the comforting atmosphere of pumpkin season with Amy's creativity and personal touch. Over time, those dishes evolved into something more symbolic, a reflection of her contribution to the family legacy. But after Amy's divorce from Matt Roloff, things shifted. Ownership restructuring brought complicated negotiations. Emotional conversations about the future of the property became public. And when Matt's partner, Caryn Chandler, took on a more visible operational role at the farm, some viewers began paying closer attention to how traditions were continuing and who was guiding them. Now, online discussions are circulating around a sensitive question. Could there be a legal dispute connected to the alleged use of Amy's original farm recipes? To be absolutely clear, there has been no confirmed public court ruling, no verified lawsuit, and no official legal filing announced. At this stage, what exists is speculation, fueled by fan observations, social media commentary, and long-standing tension over ownership and creative contributions. Still, the speculation itself has reignited debate among longtime viewers. Because if recipes developed personally by Amy were ever used commercially without her consent, some fans believe that could raise intellectual property concerns. Others argue that family businesses often share assets informally, especially when those recipes were originally created within the farm's operations. So what's actually being alleged? What would it legally mean if true? And why are some viewers saying Amy may have reached a point where she feels compelled to draw a firm boundary? Tonight, we're breaking down the claims, separating fact from rumor, and examining the broader impact this discussion is having on the Roloff family's public image and on the legacy of the farm itself. To understand why this situation has caused such a stir, we have to go back to the emotional core of the farm itself. For decades, Amy Roloff wasn't just part of the farm, she was the heart of its hospitality. At Roloff Farms, pumpkin season wasn't only about hay rides and photo ops. It was about atmosphere, tradition, comfort, and much of that comfort came straight from Amy's kitchen. From baked goods to seasonal treats, her recipes became a signature part of the fall experience. Visitors didn't just come for attractions. They came for flavor, for warmth, for something that felt homemade and personal. For years on Little People, Big World, viewers watched Amy preparing caramel apples, pumpkin bread, and family-style dishes that carried emotional weight. These weren't just products. They were tied to memories, both for the Roloff children and for loyal fans who visited year after year. When Amy later published cookbooks featuring many of those same recipes, it reinforced something important. These creations weren't presented as generic seasonal items. They were framed as part of her story, her tradition, her contribution to the farm's identity. That's where things become complicated. Because recently, some fans began pointing out alleged similarities between certain baked goods being sold at farm events and recipes Amy had long associated with herself. Social media comparisons started circulating, side-by-side ingredient lists, descriptions that sounded familiar. Even presentation styles that felt reminiscent of earlier seasons. Now, to be clear, recipes for classic fall items often overlap. Pumpkin bread is pumpkin bread. Caramel apples are caramel apples. Similarities alone don't automatically mean wrongdoing. But in emotionally charged family dynamics, perception matters almost as much as proof. Some viewers began wondering, if a recipe was developed during Amy's time actively running the kitchen and later published under her name, who retains the right to commercially sell it at the farm? Was it always considered a farm-owned recipe? Or was it Amy's intellectual contribution to the business? That question shifts the narrative from simple family disagreement into something more technical. Intellectual property. In most family businesses, ownership boundaries aren't always clearly defined, especially when creative contributions are made during a marriage. If a recipe was created while both spouses co-own the business, its legal status could depend on contracts, operating agreements, and how the business was structured at the time. And as fans know, ownership of the farm changed significantly after Amy and Matt Roloff finalized their divorce, and Amy eventually sold her remaining share of the property. Once ownership shifts, so does control. So if certain recipes were considered business assets, rather than personal intellectual property, their continued use might be completely lawful. But if they were personally authored, trademarked, or contractually reserved by Amy, that could raise different questions. At this point, there has been no verified legal filing, no public lawsuit, and no official accusation confirming any intellectual property dispute. What exists right now is speculation, fueled by emotional history and visible similarities. Still, from a narrative perspective, the symbolism is powerful. Because the farm was never just land. It was identity. It was legacy. It was contribution. For Amy, the kitchen represented her space, her role, her imprint on the family brand. So even if everything being sold today is fully permitted under existing agreements, fans can understand why emotions might run high if something feels personal. And that's what makes this situation so layered. It's not only about ingredients. It's not only about baked goods. It's about ownership of memories. In long-running family businesses, especially those documented on reality television, lines blur. Creative effort becomes part of brand equity. Personal identity becomes part of commercial success. And when relationships change, the question becomes, who owns what was built together? For now, there is no confirmed legal battle, no verified cease and desist, no public court action. But the conversation itself reveals something deeper. How strongly fans still associate Amy's presence with the warmth and hospitality that defined the farm experience for so many years. Whether this situation remains speculation or evolves into something more concrete will depend on facts, not assumptions. But one thing is certain. The emotional legacy of the kitchen at Roloff Farms continues to resonate. According to online discussions, Amy's alleged legal argument centers around ownership. Did the recipes belong to the farm business entity, or were they her individual creative property? That distinction could be everything. If recipes were developed personally and later published independently, there could be claims related to authorship rights. On the other hand, if they were created as part of farm operations during the marriage, legal interpretation becomes more complicated. Supporters of Matt Roloff argue that anything developed on the farm may fall under business assets. Supporters of Amy Roloff argue that creative authorship matters, especially if those recipes are tied to her published works and personal branding beyond the farm. Again, no official verdict has been publicly confirmed, but even the possibility of court involvement suggests the disagreement may be serious. And what makes this more intense is the emotional history behind it. This isn't just flour and sugar. It's legacy. It's identity. It's credit. For longtime viewers of Little People, Big World, the farm was never just a filming location. Roloff Farms symbolized years of work, family milestones, and shared dreams. And over time, Amy's presence in the kitchen became part of that image, from pumpkin season treats to family gatherings that fans watched unfold on screen. So if there truly is tension over recipes, it isn't surprising that emotions could run high. Because recipes, especially in family businesses, are rarely just ingredients on paper. They can represent personal effort, experimentation, tradition passed down, and in some cases, a pathway to independent income after a separation. Legal experts often explain that intellectual property disputes hinge on timing and structure. When were the recipes created? Under whose name were they registered or published? Were they part of a formal business agreement? Or were they developed privately and later brought into the business sphere? Without access to contracts or court filings, it's impossible to confirm specifics. And as of now, no official documentation has been released publicly detailing a formal lawsuit over recipes. Still, the speculation alone has reignited broader conversations among fans. Some viewers recall how the farm's ownership transition already created strain within the family. Negotiations about property, buyouts, and expectations played out publicly over the years. And whenever business and family intersect, misunderstandings can escalate quickly. Others point out that after the divorce, both Matt and Amy pursued independent paths, new homes, new projects, new chapters. Amy focused more on her personal ventures and published works, while Matt continued overseeing farm operations. If creative assets overlap with shared business history, untangling them can be complex, legally and emotionally. But it's important to emphasize something clearly. At this time, there has been no verified public confirmation of an active court ruling declaring either party right or wrong regarding recipe ownership. Online conversations often amplify partial information. A single comment can become a headline. A rumor can evolve into assumed fact. And in the age of social media, narratives spread fast, especially when they involve well-known television personalities. What remains factual is this. Amy Roloff has authored cookbooks and built a brand connected to her culinary identity. Matt Roloff continues to manage business interests connected to the farm. And both were deeply involved in building the public image of Roloff Farms over decades. When creative work emerges from shared life and shared business, drawing boundaries later can be challenging. But until official records or statements confirm legal proceedings, the situation remains in the realm of discussion, not documented judgment. Still, fans continue watching closely. Because when legacy, ownership, and personal identity intersect, especially in a family already marked by public transitions, even something as simple as a recipe can carry enormous symbolic weight. And whether this turns out to be a legal dispute, a misunderstanding, or simply online exaggeration, one thing is certain. The story surrounding Little People, Big World, and the future of Roloff Farms continues to evolve. And until confirmed facts emerge, the only responsible position is careful observation, not conclusions. If legal action truly took place, the financial implications could be significant. Pumpkin season at Roloff Farms generates major revenue every single year. It isn't just a seasonal event, it's a brand. It's tradition. It's tourism. Families travel from different states just to experience it. For years, that farm has been more than property. It's been a public symbol of the Roloff legacy on Little People, Big World. Branding matters. Public image matters. And controversy can either drive attention or seriously damage reputation. In today's media landscape, even rumors can affect ticket sales, partnerships, sponsorships, and long-term trust. Some businesses survive scandal. Others struggle quietly behind the scenes. If tensions truly escalated into something formal, operations would need to remain stable. For Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler, maintaining smooth public-facing events would be essential. Staff morale, vendor relationships, visitor confidence, all of it depends on stability. And then there's the creative side. For Amy Roloff, protecting her creative work or intellectual contributions, if that's part of the discussion, could be about principle more than profit. After decades of building a life and identity connected to the farm, emotional ownership can matter just as much as legal ownership. But beyond contracts and revenue, the emotional ripple effect could be even larger. The Roloff children have already navigated years of post-divorce tension. Viewers watched the difficult separation unfold publicly. They watched negotiations over the farm. They watched conversations that didn't always end in agreement. A public legal dispute, especially one tied to the family legacy, could deepen divides that never fully healed. When business and family overlap, boundaries blur. And that's where things become complicated. Some fans online are already split. One side believes Amy is finally standing firm, standing up for herself after years of compromise and emotional strain. They view strength, independence, closure. Another side believes family matters, especially ones connected to shared history, should remain private. They argue that public disputes only prolong pain and invite outside judgment. Both perspectives reflect something deeper. This isn't just about money. It's about legacy. It's about identity. It's about who gets to shape the future of something that once belonged to everyone. The farm represented childhood memories for the kids. It represented partnership for Matt and Amy. It represented possibility for future generations. And once those expectations diverged, the emotional stakes rose far beyond financial numbers. There's also the reality of how public narratives evolve. Silence can be interpreted as strategy. Statements can be interpreted as defense. And absence of information can sometimes create louder speculation than confirmed facts ever would. As of now, there has been no verified public confirmation of major legal consequences. That distinction matters. Rumors can feel real online, but verified action requires documentation, statements, or official records. Until then, everything exists in a space of possibility. Still, situations like this remind many viewers of a broader lesson. Unresolved business ties after divorce can create long-term complications, especially when property, branding, and public visibility are involved. Divorce may legally separate two people, but shared ventures can continue binding them financially and emotionally for years. And when emotions resurface, even years later, it can reopen wounds that were thought to be closed. For the Roloff family, the future now feels uncertain to some fans. Will this bring closure? Will it create further distance? Or will it quietly resolve behind the scenes without dramatic fallout? What remains undeniable is this: the farm is more than land. It is memory. It is history. It is a symbol of what once was, and what still continues in a different form. And when symbols become points of conflict, the impact spreads beyond the individuals involved. It touches children. It touches extended family. It touches loyal viewers who have invested emotionally for nearly 2 decades. No matter what ultimately proves true, the situation highlights how fragile the balance between family and business can be, especially under public scrutiny. And for now, fans continue watching, waiting, wondering. If any kind of formal dispute were ever to surface involving Roloff Farms, there are generally a few realistic paths forward, and most of them don't involve dramatic courtroom scenes like TV often suggests. First, the most common outcome in business or property disagreements is a private settlement. These agreements usually happen quietly, with terms that are not publicly disclosed. Families, especially ones connected to a long-running show like Little People, Big World, often prefer privacy to protect relationships and public image. Another possibility would be a licensing or usage agreement. If there were questions about branding, land use, or business rights tied to Roloff Farms, parties could negotiate clear boundaries moving forward. That might include defined ownership percentages, event hosting rights, media or branding permissions, revenue sharing terms. Sometimes clarity, not conflict, is the real goal. A third outcome could be a public clarification statement. If rumors grow large enough, families sometimes address them directly, not to confirm wrongdoing, but to calm speculation. Silence often fuels theories. A brief statement can reset the narrative without escalating anything legally. There's also the possibility of a permanent business separation. That doesn't necessarily mean emotional fallout. It can simply mean that each person chooses a cleaner path forward, separate investments, separate ventures, and fewer shared obligations. For families with complex histories, that can sometimes reduce tension rather than increase it. It's important to remember that as of now, there has been no verified confirmation of criminal proceedings or prison charges connected to the individuals often discussed in fan speculation. Property disputes, misunderstandings, or internal negotiations, if they exist, are typically civil matters handled quietly. What makes this situation feel bigger to fans is the history. Roloff Farms isn't just land, it's legacy, it's childhood memories, it's televised family milestones. For viewers who have watched over the years, the farm represents something emotional, not just financial. So any uncertainty surrounding it naturally creates anxiety among longtime followers. At the same time, reality TV shows only part of the story. Off-camera decisions often involve practical considerations, retirement planning, tax structure, long-term maintenance costs, and changing life goals. Those factors don't make headlines, but they often drive real-world decisions. So what happens next? Most likely, quiet conversations, careful legal review, strategic planning, and gradual shifts rather than explosive revelations. If something formal were ever filed, it would become public record. Until then, speculation remains speculation. What remains certain is this: the story of Roloff Farms continues evolving long after cameras stop rolling. And whether through official updates, social media hints, or continued silence, fans of Little People, Big World will keep watching closely, waiting for clarity, and hoping that whatever happens next protects both the family legacy and the relationships at the center of it. At the end of the day, whether this alleged courtroom tension leads to an official legal shift or simply fades into a quiet resolution, it highlights something much deeper about Little People, Big World, and the people at its center. Roloff Farms has never just been property. It has never just been acreage, structures, or seasonal pumpkin crowds. For different members of the family, it represents completely different chapters of life. For Amy Roloff, the farm may symbolize decades of memories, raising 4 children, building traditions, hosting family gatherings, and pouring personal creativity into every corner of the space. It carries emotional labor that cameras can only partially capture. It represents resilience, transition, and reinvention after major life changes. For Matt Roloff, the farm has often represented vision, expansion, development, business strategy, and long-term planning. It reflects ambition and the desire to build something lasting. And for Caryn Chandler, who stepped into that world later, it likely represents a shared future and the continuation of plans already in motion. When legacy, ownership, business interests, and personal identity intersect, emotions can naturally run high. Even when no official statements confirm dramatic outcomes, the weight of history alone can create tension. Land can be divided. Contracts can be negotiated. But memories and meaning are far more complicated. Right now, there are still no verified confirmations of dramatic legal consequences. No public court rulings reshaping everything overnight. Only speculation, interpretation, and a lot of emotional investment from viewers who have followed this family's journey for years. And perhaps that is the most important reminder: stories evolve, situations change, families adapt. What feels uncertain today may look very different tomorrow. As viewers, all we can truly do is wait for verified updates, respect the privacy of those involved, and hope that clarity, and maybe even peace, eventually follows for everyone connected to the farm and its future. Because beyond headlines, beyond rumors, and beyond speculation, there are real people navigating complicated transitions. We'll continue watching, listening for confirmed developments, and separating fact from assumption as this story unfolds. With that said, thank you for watching, and until next time.